What's that? What's that? You want me to walk into the ocean and never come back? Anyway, magic cards. I'm a huge magic nerd. How high would the stack of magic cards be if you took every single unique magic card in the history of the card game and stacked it on top of each other, one onto the other? How high would it go? Well, there are 19,000, a little over 19,000 magic cards, and these magic cards are, don't worry, it's a common, are about a half a millimeter in thickness. And so, all of the magic cards ever printed, if you had a copy of just one each, would be, I want them to guess first. I'll let you take a shot at it. Too late! 10 meters or so. So about 30 feet worth of magic cards is all the magic cards ever printed. Just a huge stack. And I spend a lot of my life thinking about these stacks on stacks on stacks. Hello and welcome to another edition of Footnotes, the companion show to Because Science, where I take all of your comments, questions, and corrections and spear them with the trident of truth. I mean, with stuff I remember from college and Google. Oh, I also tell you on this show what's coming up next. On this channel. Hint, it's a superpower that you don't want, probably. Easy. But getting right to it, in the last episode of Because Science, we were trying to figure out how Aquaman swims so dang fast. Oh, right. I said that because of the gargantuan power value it would take just to overcome the force of drag in a liquid like water, Aquaman is probably incorporating something that we have tried before with torpedoes and projectiles called super cavitation. And maybe that is how he is doing it, and enveloping himself in a bubble of bubbles, and thereby lowering the drag forces on him and going a lot faster with the same power requirement. But what did you have to say? Our first comment comes from Pale Ghost 69, nice, who says, I'm sure you'll probably cover this, but in case not, wouldn't supersonic speeds underwater still create a sonic boom, if not louder, from the pressure of the water increasing from the speed of the implosion? Imagine all those poor dolphins and whales who have super sensitive hearing. R.I.P. our aqua mammalian brothers. Ooh, sad emoji face. When you get to supersonic speeds in water, because water is a lot closer together than air molecules, the H2O and stuff, because it's a lot closer together, pressure waves can transmit a lot more quickly, and so the speed of sound in water is 4 to 5 times more than the speed of sound in air. It's around 1,500 meters per second, and when you get up to those speeds, exactly what we discussed in the video starts to happen. You start to lower the pressure of the water you're pushing out of the way so much that it turns into water vapor, and then you get super cavitation. But because water is a fluid, just like air is a fluid, you do still get sonic booms in water, which is to say you get a shock wave, a leading shock wave at the tip of Aquaman's, trident or face that would propagate outwards from his travel. And considering the fact that our marine brethren are very sensitive to sound and pressure in water, as are fish in general, then yes, Aquaman swimming past them could do a lot of damage. Unfortunately, we do know that things such as sonar, which is sound navigation and ranging in an acronym, does affect creatures like whales. There is evidence to say that using sonar a lot underwater, sound waves in water, has led to beaching of whales and can cause that kind of behavior where they will just go and strand themselves on a beach to die. So, if Aquaman was having any kind of effect like that, then he wouldn't really be saving the seas very much, now would he? Although, if he can talk to marine life, then he would just tell them to get far away from wherever he was traveling, so it depends specifically on how the powers work, I think. Our next comment comes from Zamonda, who says, I've heard that dolphins sometimes swim so fast that they create cavitation bubbles from going too fast in the water, and they create water vapor and then implode on themselves. They create cavitation bubbles and they hurt themselves. So how much damage would the shockwave from Aquaman do? So we've gone through that a little bit so far, but I will say there's also research into the top speed for animals like dolphins, specifically because of cavitation bubbles that would form on the surface of their skin. Aquaman could maybe super cavitate, and seeing that he is superhumanly durable, maybe this won't be a problem, but cavitation bubbles are a hard physical limit on the the top speed for marine mammals. For example, here's a short quote from a study published in 1923. In fact, cavitation poses a real limit on warm-bodied large swimmers at shallow depth, and that's around 10 to 15 meters per second, which isn't very fast, being the maximal cavitation-free velocity. Above that speed, cavitation is imminent. Lacking pain receptors on some of their fins, these animals may temporarily cross the cavitation limit, and cavitation-induced damage has been observed. On the other hand, dolphins probably cannot cross this limit without pain. So there is some hard cavitation-based limit that Aquaman would have to work around, and he would need complete control over the seas and water, but we will get to that. Our next comment comes from Cohen Bresters, who says, why doesn't he just open his mouth? If he moves at 3,000 meters per second and has an open mouth, because an open mouth has an area of 1.55 times 10 to the negative 3 square meters, which I measured by putting a cup in my mouth and measuring that, he would consume about 5,000 kilograms of water every second, and according to E equals MC squared, if you perfectly convert all this water directly into energy, it would more than satisfy his power requirement. Oh, love the show, by the way. Thank you! Well, Cohen, I really like your math, but if he was directly converting mass into energy, like the mass of water that he would be ingesting with an open mouth, that is speculating that he has also, maybe to get direct energy conversion, 5,000 kilograms of antimatter inside his body to directly convert all that energy, and then a way to convert that heat and light energy into something that could resemble propulsion. That sounds even weirder than just going really fast with supercavitation. So I like your math, but I'm not sure on implementing it into the canon, and I have no power over that anyway. However, this does remind me of something really interesting about blue whales, which we brought up in the episode. When a blue whale opens its mouth to get that 500,000 calorie value in a single gulp, blue whales are ingesting so much water, kind of like you're saying, Cohen, that the weight of that water equals the weight of the blue whale itself. Think of how big a gulp of water that would be if, say, if you're an average human, if you gulp down 62 kilograms of water, 130 or so pounds of water at once. You die. What's that? You don't need to drink that much water, and you only need to drink when you're thirsty, and that 8 glasses of water a day is a general requirement but doesn't apply to everyone, and most people can only satisfy their drinking requirement if they just follow what their body tells them? Now you say nothing? Our next comment comes from Hans Julian, who says, I've been wondering whether the existence of this guy, causing the producers in Hollywood to start hiring science professors in order to make their films seem more unscientific, even though it should be magic. Well, it's funny that you should say that, Hans. It's not my fault, because this was established before I was doing Because Science, and there's many people who do what I do, so it can't be just me. But there is an organization called the Science and Entertainment Exchange, and it's in Los Angeles, California, and what it does, it's kind of like Rent a Scientist for any Hollywood film that wants to be more scientifically accurate. The Science and Entertainment Exchange has loaned out scientists to everything from Thor to Ant-Man, to The Big Bang Theory, to one of my favorite shows, perhaps you've heard of it, The Expanse. So the Science and Entertainment Exchange has been doing great work for years, and you can check it out in the link that I've provided in the show notes. But yes, Hollywood has gotten wind of the fact that as we progress as a society and we get more science-based in our technology and policy, that audiences cannot suspend their disbelief as much, and so audiences expect some level of realism, and that's what places like the Science and Entertainment Exchange, that's what they hope to do. So check them out if you're interested, and they do really great work. For example, a professor they hired to consult on the movie Thor, the first one from Marvel, he is the reason why Jane Foster is a physicist and not a nurse. The script originally had a nurse, but he suggested making her a physicist to get some of the dialogue across that they were going through in that movie with the Einstein-Rosen bridges and what have you, so they're doing good work. I do adequate work. But the nerdiest comment at the time I'm filming this video, I'm giving to Video Grimes, who says something long, but I'm gonna give it to him. Funny thing about dents as weapons, the more points you put on a dent, the more properties and the functionality of that dent change. The most effective weapon you could use would be a monodent. And then Video Grimes goes on to say that as you increase the number of points with the same amount of force behind this sweet dent, with the same amount of force, but increasing area as you add more points, the pressure at those points actually goes down. And so you go from a explicitly piercing weapon to a weapon that gives you a better chance to, say, catch fish. If you had a pentadent or an octadent or a decadent even, we'll get to that. I hear you. If you have that, if you increase the number of points on something like this, you increase the chances of piercing something when you don't need pure piercing power. For pointing all of that out to us and saying exactly what I would say if I was making your comment. In fact, I did the same thing for X23, saying that her claws technically apply more pressure than Wolverine, and a lot of guys on the internet got mad because I said a girl was deadlier. For that, and reminding me of that debacle, you are indeed... What was that? You want me to call my brother because I haven't called him in a while? Okay. And for all that, you are indeed a super nerd. Whoa! What? But of course, I'm not always right. I thought the American Ninja Warrior course would be easy. It is not easy. Maybe I'll show you that video one day. So what did I get wrong last week? Yep. That's correct. Last week. Our first correction comes from a few people, William Hull and Nuclear and, oh, I get it, and Yamanoki, who say something like, instead of just propel... What was that? What was that? You want me to put 20 points on a spear? And then say, how's that for a D20 Matt Mercer and stab him? All of these commenters say something like, instead of just a straight-up propulsion system for Aquaman or magneto-hydrodynamic propulsion or something like that, what if Aquaman, through some kind of hydrokinesis, could control the water in such a way that he could part it in front of him as he moves, and then use that parted water to propel him as he went further along, kind of like a warp bubble that is moving him through the water, letting the ocean do the work, so to speak, so he doesn't have to kick with that 1 terawatt ridiculous power requirement. Now, I really like this idea, and yes, it would be more simple if the water itself could do the work and it wasn't down to his thick thigh muscles and glutes, but then we're just saying if it's hydrokinesis like Mera can use or Aquaman in some iterations, if it's just hydrokinesis, then we are effectively saying that even though this could work, it is just straight up magic. And that's not the name of this show. You know what I would do if I was Aquaman? I mean, I wouldn't travel nearly as fast, but I'd have dolphins push my feet. Have you ever had that? I went to Mexico once, and they do a certain hand signal, and the dolphin comes up and pushes on the bottom of your heel and raises you up out of the water, and you feel like you're one of those mermaids made out of wood on the front of a ship. What's that? What's that? You want me to cancel because science and move to Arizona to work on leather? No. Our next correction is more of a statement, but I'll give it to him because it's former Super Nerd Ninja Bear Films who says, I started trying looking up information on the population density of marine life to see if Aquaman could really swim at 3,000 meters per second because he'd often be crashing into fish and other marine life. Instead, I got statistics on the frequency of plastics and plastic particles from tiny microparticles to much larger debris and came to the conclusion that if he can swim fast, he should never emerge from the ocean after swimming that fast without his face and body being peppered with small pieces of plastics like he was hit with a plastic confetti bomb. I have nothing to add, other than the fact that it would look fabulous. Maintain. What's that? You want me to cancel because science and exclusively do a maintain show? Our next comment comes from Pack Monster 0, who says basically instead of using fish and food energy to satisfy his enormous power requirement, what about photosynthesis? The sun puts out quite a lot, and a lot of it hits the ocean. Most of it hits the ocean, as a matter of fact. Why can't Aquaman just photosynthesize? I like where your head's at. But there's a problem, and the problem is surface area. So an average human has about 2 square meters of surface area. That is to say, if I cut off all your skin and laid it out in a square, it'd be about 2 square meters. That's not a whole lot. The sun, after the sunlight passes through our atmosphere where some radiation is absorbed. On the surface of the Earth, right at the top of the ocean and on land, it's about 1,000 watts per square meter. Now, best case scenario, Aquaman would be right at the very surface of the ocean and all of his body would be absorbing sunlight at once. What does that get us? About 2,000 watts. So, that's 2,000 joules per second. Considering that we are talking about terawatts, that means we're off by a factor of 1 billion if we're using photosynthesis, even with a 100% efficient solar cell in his body. So, solar power doesn't really work. It works better for stuff like Superman's heat vision because you can get energy over time and then build it up and release it, but to satisfy something that is an ongoing thing like swimming through the ocean doesn't quite work. And if Aquaman ever has to swim at depth, which he does because that's where Atlantis is, not a whole lot of sunlight penetrates there, so there's some problems with it. Our next correction comes from Michael Luton, who says, "Hey Kyle, great episode, love the program." Thank you! They go on to say, "I have tried in the past to get on the show to no avail, so here I try again." Oh, lucky you, buddy. "I just wanted to point out that you said 200 miles per hour is the same as 200 knots, and that is not correct." Fine. Before I go on, yes, you are correct. 200 knots and 200 miles per hour are not the same thing, but they're pretty close. I was 87% correct. But you go on to say something about how the unit knots actually came to be, and that's why you're on the show, buddy. Oh, you did it. Michael says that more or less they tied a bunch of knots in a length of rope and put that length of rope around some wood or something that would float and then threw it overboard. And then over time they counted how many knots left the boat as it was being pulled into the water, and then with a set amount of time and a known distance, they got a unit of measurement, which they called knots, and that's where that unit comes from. And says, "Again, thank you, Kyle, for such an awesome show. I do really enjoy it and look forward to it every week." Thank you. Thank you so much. It really... What's that? What's that? You want me to delete every comment and make it private like a video game company that has a game that the fans are revolting on? No. But the nerdiest correction at the time I'm filming this episode, I gotta give to the impish Doulahan, who says, "Because it's bothering me so much," which should be an alternate title for my show. "Because it's bothering me so much, Trident comes from the Latin. So the..." Wow. Grammar mistake right off the bat, huh, buddy? "So the appropriate multiples of teeth on my dent here would be as follows. Quinquident, not pentadent, which uses Greek. Sexadent, not hexadent. Septadent, octadent, novendent, which is like, because if you say it the other way, it's like saying 9 tooth instead of 9 teeth. Okay, fine. And finally, decadent, not decadent, which is Greek again. Although, they go on to say, I suppose if you wanted to go Greek with it and use the Greek don't instead of the Latin dent, it'd be tridont, tetradont, pentadont, hexadont, heptadont, octadont, anodont, decadont. I feel like I was about to do It's the End of the World as We Know It. Look, you're a real super grammar nerd, even though you made a mistake in your grammar immediately. But because of your correction and because of the fact I love saying octodont out loud, you're indeed a super nerd. Yeah, no, I just said that. Now, if you are already subscribed to Alpha, which you can do at projectalpha.com, you already know what the next episode of the show is going to be because you have already seen it 2 days earlier than anyone else and other premium content for myself, Nerdist and Geek and Sundry. But if you have not subscribed to Alpha just yet, the next episode of Because Science is you probably don't want to fly like a superhero. That's right, in this week's episode of Because Science, we're going back to our kind of mini-series of You Don't Want X Superpower, this time, and maybe for the last time, going with flight. So if you evaluate the powers, the potential pros and cons scientifically of a power like flight, like we did for super speed and super strength and X-ray vision and invisibility and teleportation. Wow, I've ruined a lot. Then I think you may not want this power actually. Look, you've watched enough of my videos, you know what this is gonna be. And I'm sure some of you already have an argument with me about you don't want flight, and I hope that I address them. But if you have some super nerdy thing to say, get those comments ready on some piece of paper or even digital paper. I hear the kids are using that nowadays. And get ready for when the video drops on Thursday morning. And get in there and get nerdy. So go watch the latest episode of Because Science if you haven't yet, all about Aquaman and how he swims so dang fast, and leave me all your nerdiest and best comments, corrections, and questions at youtube.com/becausescience, facebook.com/becausescience, and @becausescience on Instagram and Twitter. And don't forget, the point of your life is to live it. And that is a very vague statement, but that's kind of the point of the point. It's whatever you make it. It's scary, and it's exciting, and it's vast, just like the universe. Go get it. What's that? Oh, that was kind of a trite quote that didn't really mean anything? They get it.